Dikshitar allowed himself to be influenced or inspired by so many things. He has composed what we call nottusvara-sahitya. Okay, these are about 36 compositions, which are fundamentally band tunes played by the British colonial band. These are honestly Scottish and Irish jigs, basically. And many of them are popular English tunes, like ta 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 ta. This is pop. Anybody who knows, they know this tune.
Which would make this gentleman, Muthuswami's brother, learned the European violin. And after him, its use as an accompaniment for Carnatic music gained vogue. That's quite fascinating. I mean, we take the Carnatic violin as a natural thing now. This week at the NCPA tells you about all that's happening in the National Center of Performing Arts. It's not literally this week, but on the 2nd of August, 6:30 p.m., as part of NCPA HSBC's Bandish Day 2, comes a gentleman who has a tremendous fan following, not only all over India and the world, but in particular in Mumbai. And we're very pleased to have Mr. TM Krishna, the eminent Carnatic vocalist and social commentator, with us. Hi, how are you? Thank you for sparing some time to talk to us.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be on your show.
Now, all of you who are watching, listening, the box office is now open. Go to Book My Show or get to the venue box office. It's supported by HSBC. It's a two-pronged question, so it will elicit a slightly longer answer. But then that's how all first questions are. One, if you could talk about the significance of the genius of Muthuswami Dikshitar, because it is the composer's 250th birth anniversary that we're celebrating with your performance, your concert. Also, the sub-question is what it means for a repertoire to thrive for over 2 centuries, which anybody would find fascinating.
Well, it is a complicated question that will elicit a kind of a long answer to. First, I think we need to place Muthuswami Dikshitar along with his 2 eminent contemporaries, Tyagaraja and Shyama Shastri. The first differentiating factor is that there is no doubt in terms of raga schools or aesthetic schools within what we refer to as the Carnatic genre or idiom. Dikshitar represents a distinct school of musical thought vis-a-vis his 2 other contemporaries. So that makes him, first of all, aesthetically different. This means his conception of raga, his conception of movement of time, laya or tala, rhythm, his conception of text, his conception of compositional form, all this were different from Tyagaraja and Shyama Shastri. Now, that's the first huge distinguishing factor. So, in fact, I would say that, you have to program your mind when you learn a Dikshitar composition after learning, say, the other 2, because you suddenly you're dealing with something that's an entirely different being, right? And that has historical reasons, and we can go into the technicalities of that. But that's one part. The other, I think, what also makes him very special is he was definitely an innovator, a breaker of norms of his time. We often think of the past and think of these great musicians as continuums of their past. What we fail to recognize is that they were also breaking away from their past. They were questioning their past in the way they made art. So Dikshitar takes pathways that people did not take before him. He suggests ideas that people before him did not suggest, or even people around him did not suggest. So therefore, these are these two very distinct qualities, both in terms of his tradition and his own individual. I think this whole idea that he allowed his individuality or his personal conception of music to, in a way, be born in the past but live in his present is actually modernity. So I would call Dikshitar a modernist, if that's a word I can use, of his time. We again make a mistake of thinking of modernity in terms of technology, in terms of mechanics, in terms of today. But in his times, I think Dikshitar was definitely a modernist. Now, interestingly, till at least maybe the early mid part of the 20th century, or a little early mid part of the 20th century, Dikshitar's compositions were not as popular on the concert stage. Now that has sociological reasons and historical reasons. Tyagaraja's compositions were the ones that really got popular on the concert stage. This has got to do with where they were performed, who performed them, who were the initial great performers on stage. These kind of questions kind of give you an answer why, say, Tyagaraja became more mainstay in the Carnatic music 20th century concert. But from around maybe 1940s and 50s, you have scholars and musicians who belong to that lineage slowly digging up these compositions and bringing them out. But it took, I must say, a good number of years for a larger bank of his compositions to get on to the concert and Carnatic music stage. But what's quite amazing to see is that you can take that composition today and you can give it life in a concert, and it breathes and allows the musician to breathe. It's not enough if the composition breathes, it must allow the musician to breathe. And that's what Dikshitar offers you. He offers you the breadth of his mind, the breadth of his heart, the breadth of Carnatic music.
How beautifully and eloquently put. I'd like you to explain what a vaggeyakara means, because in essence he was an 18th century vaggeyakara.
Yeah.
If you could delve into that, that'd be wonderful.
That's a very unusual term that is kind of, in terms of the musical world, exclusive to Carnatic music. Vaggeyakara. It's a beautiful term. Normally, like for example, take film music, for example, right? So you have a lyricist who writes the song, and then you have a music composer who does the music. Now, who does what first is, of course, dependent on so many factors. Honestly, also dependent on the power of the music composer. If he is more powerful, then sometimes the tunes are made first and the lyricist writes it later. Both have happened. Either way. Now, vaggeyakara means that one individual has done both the music and the text. Vak is that which is said. Geya is that which is sung or music. This is word and that's music. Vaggeyakara is a person who brings together the text and the music into one form. And that, I think, is very special, because we are also then saying one didn't come before the other. We are saying they were born together, which means ideationally, conceptually, the composition is of a different nature. One is not added to another. So when a vaggeyakara creates a composition, there's an intrinsic unity and a conversation between every syllable, every consonant, every word, every phrase, with the way the raga would move, with the way it is spread across a time cycle, with the way it gives you highlights, with the way it concludes and leads back to the primary line. So this is only possible when one person conceives of the entire art object. And I think that's what makes the vaggeyakara very special.
You talked about the trinity of Carnatic music, which is Tyagaraja, Shyama Shastri and Dikshitar. I believe all three of them were born in the town of Tiruvarur.
Yes, Tiruvarur.
You know, people love folklore and tales. So almost like an entry into the Guinness Book of World Records, I don't know. I believe Dikshitar went from deity to deity, street to street in Tiruvarur, actually singing at all the significant places. Is that true?
Well, yes. Well, he did sing on many of the deities in Tiruvarur. Whether he completed the entire chart is, of course, questionable. But yes, I think his observation powers were quite phenomenal. And more than that, let's look at it this way. How does any artist draw inspiration? From all that exists within and around. And here you have this person who drew inspiration from every story, every folklore, every deity's different moods, every deity's different celebrations. So I think you needed to be an acute observer of your environment, of where you live, which means a person who is so acutely self-aware. I mean, these are incredible qualities for a human being, right? And then to allow that to abstract itself into a musical form, into ideas, into sounds and into new combinations that didn't exist before. Yes, he went not just in Tiruvarur. You have this man who traveled quite a bit. And also, very important, one thing that also stands out is Dikshitar allowed himself to be influenced or inspired by so many things. He has composed what we call nottusvara-sahitya. Okay, these are about 36 compositions, which are fundamentally band tunes played by the British colonial band. These are honestly Scottish and Irish jigs, basically. And many of them are popular English tunes, like ta 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 ta. This is pop. Anybody who knows, they know this tune, right? I'm sure they played in many of the pubs in Scotland even now, right? Imagine this man listens to this, and we're talking about what, so many 100 years ago, listens to this and says, wow, this is incredible. And he creates text. Now, here he is not the vaggeyakara, by the way, interestingly. He's taken the tune and he's created text that matches those melodies. So one of the tunes he took happened to become the national anthem of Britain. God Save the Gracious King, or God Save the Gracious Queen, as the case may be, was also taken by him and made into a song in Sanskrit lyrics. Santatam pahimam sangeeta shyamale sarvadhare. This is what? God Save the Gracious King. That's what it is. So, I mean, this also tells you something about the mind of the man and an absolute openness to receive, irrespective of where it came from. This borderless and boundaryless receiving is, I think, quite beautiful to learn from.
You know, as part of my research on doing this interview with you, I had to get things right. In my essential reading, I came across an article by the musicologist and Sanskrit scholar V. Raghavan in the September 1975 issue of the NCPA journal.
Yes.
And I'd like you to comment on this. He says that the third son of Ramaswamy Dikshitar, which is the Dikshitar we're talking about, his father, which would make this gentleman Muthuswami's brother, learned the European violin. Yeah. After him, its use as an accompaniment for Carnatic music gained vogue. That's quite fascinating. I mean, we take the Carnatic violin as a natural thing now.
So I would not entirely agree with Raghavan there. There are three theories going around, right? Okay. One of them is that Balaswami Dikshitar did learn it, and he did learn it very early in his life. And there is also one other story that it came a little later when one of Muthuswami Dikshitar's students learned the violin. But I'm sure Balaswami Dikshitar is one of the early learners of the instrument. But the but here is, even before him, the violin was actually played as an accompanying instrument for sadir, or what later was reimagined and rechristened as Bharatanatyam, which the hereditary courtesan dancers and musicians, the Devadasis of those times, performed. So you have, for example, paintings, if I'm not mistaken, even during the Tipu period, in where you find a violin accompanying a dancer. So I do believe that it actually entered there. And then around maybe a little later, Balaswami Dikshitar learned it. So its entry probably came more from there, because it's interesting, even the clarinet, for example, for a long time was an accompanying instrument for sadir. Right? Mukhaveena was before that. Mukhaveena was replaced by the clarinet, and then both of them went away. Now you have the bamboo flute, which is often used in a Bharatanatyam performance, right? So I think the entry point was through sadir rather than directly through Balaswami Dikshitar. But I think Raghavan's larger point, that from there it entered what you could call Carnatic, just music presentation, is probably a fair observation to make. And also we can't forget the contribution of Dikshitar's own lineage in bringing the violin in. And please remember, the violin went into Khayal only in the 20th century. And that went through a person called Parur Sundaramaiah, who is the father of Sangeeta Kalanidhi M.S. Gopalakrishnan. He goes to Bombay and he takes the violin to Bombay. So the violin comes into Khayal or Hindustani music only much, much later.
Wonderful. The NCPA On Stage magazine has you calling Dikshitar a quote-unquote illusionist.
Yeah.
Explain that, please.
Yeah, I know. So, see, if you look at it, I mean, if you're willing to, just look at what art does, an artist does. An artist is creating an illusion, right? Fundamentally, I have to create an illusion, and I have to first buy into that illusion. And in me buying into that illusion, or shall I say, immersing myself in that illusion, I invite you into that. Now, there are different ways you could do this. Now, this is where I think Dikshitar is absolutely magical. As you can see, I'm passionately in love with this man. So, now, often we believe an illusion needs to be, if I'm going to use a kind of a physics word, filled with matter. Okay? So, you fill it enough with matter, and you attract, or you draw me into that matter, right? There are very few great composers who actually say, I don't need so much material inside. I'm going to be reductionist in material, but that is going to be your invitation. That's why Dikshitar is a fascinating illusionist. Because if you look at the way his compositions flow, you almost feel, in a philosophical way, that there is a nothingness about it. There is a languorous gap, even when music is being played. So imagine that music is flowing. There's no silence in that sense, right? In the literal sense. So music is flowing, but it's flowing in a manner that you feel there's no material that's attracting you. So then what is it that's drawing you inside, right? With most of the composers, there's always something happening. There's activity. There is always a syllable. There is quick movements. Here, the movement at times is so non-perceptible that you think it's not moving. But that's the most incredible illusion you can create. And it's a very hard illusion to create. To tell you that come into something that's not moving, or that's not active, is quite difficult. Any musician will tell you that it's very difficult to invite you into something where I'm saying, just stay there and you'll come in. And Dikshitar's melodies are those kind of haunting melodies that don't seem to be very active, that don't seem to tell you, come, it's very interesting, very exciting, I'm not going to excite you here. No, it's just saying, just stay where you are and the melody will draw you in. Or the text, he will separate one syllable from another. He'll extend a vowel sometimes to almost its extreme possibility, to the point that the musician's breath is gone, right? Wow. So you have to hold your breath until the vowel just keeps going in one direction. And what's happening, and the vowel is moving. And remember, a vowel is just ah or e. I've said pa. The consonant is gone within a second. Vowels are the most important part of musical compositions. We forget that. If it's in the vowels that melody can move. In consonants, melody can't move. Melody is clipped. The moment I say ta, the consonant is over. Is where the melody exists. So he plays with that vowel, and he plays with it with a certain calmness and peace that's incredible. And by the way, that's got nothing to do with pace. Even compositions where he has what we call slightly faster phrases, you still feel that intrinsic movement. I mean, that's the best way to explain why I called him an illusionist.
That's very exquisitely explained. My last question is about the NCPA, because the show is called This Week at the NCPA. This is the 15th edition of the annual Indian Music Festival, Bandish, which is a tribute to legendary composers supported by HSBC India. Runs 1st to the 3rd. I'd like you to talk about that, or any notable experiences you've had. You've performed so often at the National Centre of Performing Arts.
Well, I mean, I have to confess, it's one of my favorite venues, or the favorite venue to perform in Bombay, without any doubt. Mumbai, sorry. And I just love the space, and I love the way things are curated there, and the openness it allows for a musician. I think that's very important. And the openness is not just about the stage size or the audience seating. It's about the environment that is created. So you can just, I'm an artist who likes to go with pretty much a blank slate when I go to a concert. I just like to just be as blank as I can and hope that some music is going to emerge from the day. And I think NCPA really allows me to spend time with myself when I'm making music. And I think that's a very precious thing that we rarely get. And I don't know how many times I've sung there. I've sung there so many times. I enjoy it every time. And so I'm really looking forward to coming back to NCPA and again singing for all of you. And I mean, Mumbai is a special city. Nobody can ever deny that, can they?
Theatre Theatre, 2nd of August, 6:30 p.m. It's day 2 of NCPA HSBC Bandish. Tickets are live now, going out very fast at Book My Show as well as at the venue box office. Really appreciate your time, sir. Thank you. And if you'll allow me, I'll come on the 2nd and say hello to you after the show.
Please, we'd love to meet you.
94.3 Radio 1.